Her mind recalls the moments of their first meeting, when his mere presence took her breath away. His demeanor, full of severity and tension, spoke of the danger he emanated. Each step he took towards her seemed to scorch the space between them. Despite knowing the impropriety of it all, subsequent events felt predetermined and overwhelming. One morning in Guanajuato, her coffee grew cold in the cup, as if mirroring the fading of her own life. After Diego left, every morning in the house stretched on endlessly. Faint sunbeams filtered through the window, barely illuminating the remnants of a routine she struggled to maintain. An oppressive silence permeated every corner of the large, empty house. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sound of breaking glass, a sharp, dry crack that made her heart pound. For a moment, the silence that enveloped her was replaced by a surge of adrenaline. With trembling hands, she rushed into the room, hoping to find an intruder or some scene that would explain the noise. But what she found was entirely different. Beyond the curtains, which swayed slightly in the breeze, her gaze caught movement in the garden. There, amidst scattered garbage bags and the remnants of a night she'd rather forget, lay a dog. Thin, dirty, with eyes full of stories of abandonment, it was rummaging through the trash bags, searching for anything to satisfy its hunger. The sight presented a stark contrast between the animal's fragility and its desperate struggle for survival, for the simple chance to find food. For a moment, she froze, paralyzed by what she saw. Inside her, irritation over the damage to her small sanctuary battled with pity for the wretched animal. She took a step forward, more decisively than she intended, and shouted, "Get out of here!" The dog flinched, its ears perked. It froze, its eyes fixed on her. Its gaze held more than just fear or defiance, it was a silent plea. The animal's expression disarmed her. There was no aggression in it, only the instinct for survival and uncertainty about what to expect from the world. She tried to raise her voice again, but her tone was no longer as firm. "I said, leave." The dog whimpered softly, as if trying to justify its presence. Something in that sound, fragile and full of hope, deeply moved her. Her gaze fell on the animal's dirty, scarred paws. She noticed a small cut on its left paw, perhaps fresh, and her heart ached with pity. "What are you doing here?" she muttered, almost unaware of it. Her voice was much softer now. To her surprise, the dog tilted its head slightly, as if trying to understand her words. It took a step back but didn't run away. Instead, it remained standing, watching her with quiet curiosity. She leaned against the doorframe, feeling the cold metal against her skin. In that moment, the house no longer felt so empty, and this both bothered and comforted her. "Why don't you just leave?" she asked, speaking more to herself than to the dog. After a long pause, she took a deep breath and went back inside the house. Her thoughts were in complete disarray. She opened the closet and pulled out an old towel, deciding she needed to deal with the situation somehow. With slow steps, she returned to the garden, holding the towel in front of her like a shield. The dog remained still, watching her every move intently. She knelt down, carefully spreading the towel on the ground. "I won't hurt you," she said softly, almost a whisper. The dog hesitated, its body tense, but it didn't retreat. She remained crouched, waiting patiently. The cold stones beneath her knees began to feel uncomfortable, but she didn't move. Finally, the animal took one step, then another, until it was close enough for her to drape the towel over it. It didn't resist, seemingly too weak, which brought a surge of pity. Carefully standing, she led the dog into the house. For the first time in months, the silence in the house didn't feel so suffocating. She filled the bathtub with warm water, and the room filled with steam. At first, the dog resisted, but soon gave in, as if understanding it was necessary. As she washed away the dirt and grime covering its body, she saw many scars, silent testimonies to its unknown past. "What happened to you?" she whispered, though she knew no answer would come. Finishing the bath, she wrapped it in another clean towel and carried it to the living room. She laid an old blanket on the floor, and the dog, with a deep sigh, lay down on it, as if finally finding peace. She sat on the sofa, watching it. For the first time in a long time, she felt something shifting within her. That night, with the dog sleeping beside her, the house felt more alive. A quiet warmth had entered it, a presence that brought relief. Closing her eyes, she felt that something new was beginning. But she also knew this path wouldn't be easy. Who was this dog, really? Was its appearance a coincidence, or would it bring answers to questions she hadn't even suspected? That night marked the beginning of a new routine that, though unexpected, began to fill the void in her life. Charlie, as she decided to name him, quickly became a permanent resident of her home. Every morning, she woke to the sound of his paws on the wooden floor, a sound that, for some reason, comforted her. He seemed to breathe new life into a place that had once felt so barren. Her days became filled with new meaning. For the first time in a long time, she found herself smiling for simple reasons: Charlie clumsily drinking water, chasing insects in the garden. These were minor moments, but they seemed to brighten her days. She felt the sun warm her skin and noticed that the world around her had become brighter. She stepped out into the yard. What lay ahead? The park buzzed with life, people strolled leisurely, children played enthusiastically, couples found secluded spots on the grass, and elderly citizens generously fed the feathered inhabitants. In that moment, she felt a long-forgotten sense of unity with the world around her. As her gaze drifted across the surroundings, Charlie, comfortably settled on a wooden bench, watched the activity around them with interest. The woman's attention was drawn to a young couple playfully trying to take a memorable selfie with their restless Labrador, who seemed stubbornly uncooperative. This amusing scene involuntarily reminded her of Diego, and she closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to feel the poignant longing that still haunted her. "You're lucky to have him with you, you know that?" a voice beside her said. Opening her eyes, she saw a kind middle-aged woman smiling warmly at Charlie. "He looks incredibly loyal." "Yes," she replied with a reserved smile, "he came into my life when I least expected it." The woman nodded understandingly. "Sometimes they choose us, not the other way around." These words echoed in her mind on the way home. Had Charlie truly chosen her? The thought was both heartwarming and intriguing. After all, what exactly had prompted this dog to appear on her doorstep that day? That evening, while preparing dinner, Charlie followed her every step, and she felt a strange sense of protection, as if he knew something she didn't yet. After dinner, she sat on the floor beside him, gently running her fingers through his clean, soft fur. Stroking him, she involuntarily remembered Diego doing the same. He had always said that small acts of attention meant more than grand words, but now, with Charlie, she felt a different connection, one that needed no explanation or justification. One night, as she reached for a blanket to cover Charlie, she discovered an old box at the bottom of the closet. Inside lay yellowed photographs of her family. One in particular caught her eye. Her grandfather stood in front of the house she now lived in, with a dog sitting beside him. She picked up the photo and brought it closer to her eyes. Her heart pounded faster. The dog in the picture bore a striking resemblance to Charlie. "It's impossible," she whispered to herself. Charlie, intrigued, came over and rested his head on her lap. She stroked his ear, trying to make sense of what she saw. The coincidence was too obvious to ignore. Over the next few days, she began her own investigation. She asked elderly neighbors about the history of the house and the dog in the photograph. It turned out that her grandfather was known for his inseparable companion, a dog named Nero. But the most surprising thing was that, according to stories, the dog had mysteriously disappeared shortly before her grandfather's death. The more she learned, the stronger the feeling became that Charlie's appearance in her life was not accidental. He seemed to carry something more, a story yet to be told, a connection that transcended time. Watching him sleep beside the sofa, she felt a tranquility she hadn't experienced in a long time. But what did this connection between Charlie and her family's past mean? Was he just a dog, or a link to something greater that she didn't yet understand? The discovery of the photograph seemed to awaken something in her mind, as if an invisible puzzle was beginning to form. Her grandfather's face and the dog's presence in the image seemed to convey a story she didn't know but was determined to understand. Charlie remained the same, but now his eyes seemed to hold more secrets than ever. She decided to continue searching for clues. One afternoon, while Charlie peacefully dozed on the living room rug, she went up to the attic, a place she hadn't visited in years. Dust danced in the air as she opened old, forgotten boxes. Each item she pulled out was like a window into the past, old diaries, yellowed with age, letters written in calligraphic script. In one box, she found a worn, hardcover notebook. On the first page was her grandfather's name. "Maybe this is what I need," she muttered, feeling her heart quicken. She carefully flipped through the pages. The entries were disorganized, but they contained fragments of her grandfather's life, personal reflections, details of his daily routine, and frequent mentions of a dog named Nero. It was clear that Nero was very important to him. On one page, she found an entry that particularly caught her attention. "Nero was always by my side, as if he knew everything before it happened. There's something special about him, something I can't explain. They say animals sense things we can't understand, and I believe it." Reading this, she felt goosebumps prickle her skin. The words seemed to echo what she felt about Charlie. But what exactly made Nero, and now Charlie, so special? Was it a mere coincidence, or was there something more profound behind it? Determined to get to the bottom of it, she took the notebook to the living room and began reading it aloud, sitting next to Charlie. As she turned the pages, she felt his piercing gaze on her. At times, it seemed to her that animals understood more than humans, that they could hold memories or experiences in ways humans couldn't grasp. That night, something strange happened. She was preparing dinner in the kitchen when she heard Charlie growling from the living room. His growl was low but firm, unlike any sound he had made before. Entering the room, she saw him staring at the front door, as if ready to defend the house from an uninvited guest. "Charlie, what's wrong?" she asked, but he didn't tear his gaze from the door. Opening the door, she saw nothing but the night's darkness, yet the feeling that something was amiss lingered. Charlie remained restless for the rest of the night, pacing back and forth as if waiting for something. His behavior filled her with a mix of unease and curiosity. In the following days, she began to notice unusual behavior from Charlie. At times, he showed heightened alertness, as if sensing something. This reminded her of a phrase from her grandfather's notebook: "He knows everything before it happens." What was Charlie trying to foresee? Was some danger approaching, or was someone drawing near? One day, returning home from work, she found Charlie waiting for her in the driveway. As soon as she got out of the car, he headed towards the park, occasionally looking back to ensure she was following. In the park, he led her to a bench where a stranger was sitting, the same man Charlie had growled at a week ago. This time, the man stood up and approached her. "You have a wonderful dog," he said with a smile, but it didn't convince her. "Do you live nearby?" he asked, trying to strike up a conversation. Charlie immediately positioned himself between them, as if protecting her. His behavior both intrigued and disconcerted her. Who was this man, and why was Charlie reacting to him like this? That same evening, she decided to delve into something she hadn't considered before: a deeper investigation into Nero's history and his possible connection to Charlie. In local newspapers, she came across mentions of her grandfather. It turned out he was known for his loyal companion, whom everyone simply called the dog. But what interested her most was a note about Nero, the dog who had saved a child from an accident in the park. "So you've always been special," she whispered to Charlie, who was lying nearby as she read. But what did that mean for her now? Was Charlie some kind of guardian angel? A being returned to fulfill an important mission? These questions plagued her as she tried to piece together all the parts of this mysterious puzzle. What if Charlie was here not just to protect her, but to reveal something that would change her life forever? The thought that Charlie might be more than just a loyal friend lingered. There was something about him that made her wonder, where did coincidence end and something deeper, almost supernatural, begin? That morning, as she made coffee, Charlie's perceptive eyes followed her every move, as if he was trying to communicate something. He seemed to want her to understand something that remained unclear. She decided she could no longer ignore these signs. Throughout the day, she mentally compiled a list of places and people who might shed light on this mystery. Among other options, she remembered Eduardo, a retired veterinarian known for his knowledge of animal behavior and interest in unusual local stories. She picked up the phone and, after a brief conversation, arranged a meeting. When she pulled up to Eduardo's small house, she was greeted with a friendly smile. He led her into a room filled with books and animal-related items. Charlie seemed to recognize the place. "So, this is the famous Charlie," Eduardo said, crouching down to get a better look at the dog. "There's something in his eyes, an extraordinary depth." After examining Charlie, she shared everything she had learned with Eduardo, her grandfather's notebook, old photographs, and Charlie's unusual reactions in certain situations. Eduardo listened carefully, asking questions from time to time. "Do you know that dogs have an incredible olfactory memory? They can recognize places and people by scent even after many years. Perhaps he's reacting to something or someone he's met before." This explanation seemed logical, but it wasn't enough to explain all the strange coincidences. Eduardo suggested visiting the park where Charlie had shown the most unease. This could be an important clue. That same evening, while sifting through old documents she intended to take to the park, she discovered another letter, lost between the pages of her grandfather's notebook. The letter was addressed to a certain Miguel, and in it, her grandfather mentioned Nero. "Miguel, something strange is happening with Nero. He seems to sense danger before it occurs. Today, he froze again, sensing something I can't explain. Do you understand?" The mention of Miguel was new to her. Who was he, and why did her grandfather trust him so much? She decided she needed to find this person or someone who had information about him. She carefully put the letter away, feeling she was getting closer to unraveling something important. The next day at the park, Eduardo watched with interest as Charlie sniffed every corner. Suddenly, in front of a large tree, his paws sank slightly into the ground, and he began to dig with unprecedented determination. "What did you find, Charlie?" she asked, crouching beside him. Beneath the loose earth was a small, rusty metal box. With Eduardo's help, she managed to open it. Inside were a medal, an old portrait of her grandfather with Nero, and a key. The key seemed meant for something important, but there were no clues as to what it might unlock. Eduardo carefully examined the medal. "This is a commendation. Your grandfather must have received it for some heroic act. But what interests me most is why it was buried here." The old portrait depicted her grandfather proudly displaying the medal. The inscription read, "To Nero, my guardian." These words touched the depths of her soul, yet at the same time left a feeling of something unsaid. Eduardo suggested that the key to the mystery might lie in the old family home, a place she hadn't dared to return to after her parents' tragic deaths. Overcoming her fear, she decided to go there. Arriving at the abandoned dwelling, she felt a poignant mix of melancholy and vague hope. Even Charlie seemed to be paying special attention. To her surprise, the key fit the lock perfectly. Inside an old chest, she discovered yellowed letters, faded photographs, and an unfinished manuscript, likely a book her grandfather had been working on. The first pages described events related to Nero and how he had repeatedly saved their family from imminent danger. But what caught her attention most was the description of a mysterious figure her grandfather called the Observer. According to the text, this person seemed inextricably linked to strange events in the city and appeared whenever something important was about to happen. "That's the man from the park," she whispered, as if struck by a sudden revelation. Charlie growled softly, as if confirming her hunch. Who was he, this observer? And what connection linked him to Nero, Charlie, and her family? She was about to discover that the past held secrets capable of overturning her entire understanding of her own history. The solution seemed closer than ever. But the closer she got to the truth, the clearer it became that uncovering the past secrets would come at a high price. Charlie, with his perceptive gaze and protective demeanor, was more than just a dog. He was a guardian of a history woven from loyalty, courage, and unsolved mysteries. That same morning, she decided to push past her doubts. She called Eduardo and shared her findings from the chest, letters, photographs, and the manuscript that mentioned the Observer. Eduardo suggested looking for additional information in the city's historical archives. Together, they went to the local library, spending long hours poring over old records and forgotten entries. Among the yellowed pages of 1960s newspapers, they found an article mentioning her grandfather and Nero. The report detailed a fire at an old factory where Nero had courageously saved several lives. But what caught their attention was a phrase at the end of the article. Eyewitnesses reported the presence of a mysterious man who seemed to observe from a distance but vanished before anyone could speak to him. "This man is everywhere," Eduardo muttered, frowning. "Are you sure you only saw him once?" The image of the man in the park and the strange feeling she'd had upon meeting him resurfaced in her mind. She realized she had to learn more about him. Back home, she began to study every detail of her grandfather's manuscript. The descriptions of the observer suggested he was no ordinary man. He seemed to appear whenever something significant was about to happen, like a guardian or observer of fate. As she read, she felt Charlie press against her, as if in support, and she smiled, finding comforting warmth in this uncertainty. "You always know what to do, don't you?" she asked, stroking his head. It was then that she decided to return to the park, but this time with a clear purpose, to find this mysterious man. Taking Charlie with her, she headed to the place where it all began. The tension in the air was almost palpable, but she was resolute. She sat on the same bench where the man had been before, and waited. A few hours later, he appeared. Dressed in a dark coat, he appeared both ordinary and captivating. Charlie immediately became alert but didn't growl. He seemed to understand that this moment was crucial. "You have questions?" the man asked before she could utter a word. "Who are you? Why were you watching my grandfather, and now me?" The man smiled slightly but offered no direct answer. "Your grandfather was a remarkable man. As was Nero. He was destined to protect something greater than himself. And Charlie chose you." These words made her hold her breath. Before she could ask another question, the man placed a small wooden box in her hands. Inside was a medallion with a wolf's image and an engraved inscription, "Protect what matters." "What does this mean?" she asked. The man merely smiled and gestured toward Charlie. Charlie looked at her, as if saying everything would be all right. They returned home in silence, with the box in her hands and more questions than answers. Over the next few days, she pondered everything she had learned, her grandfather's legacy, Charlie's role, and the part she herself was destined to play. She began to write her own story, weaving all the pieces into a narrative that honored the past and foreshadowed the future.